inevitable and its consequences don't just affect you, so it's best to plan for those around you. Let's look at the ins and outs of drawing up a will and why it's an essential part of life. Joining me on the line is attorney Mahmood Mia to tell us more. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Mahmood, and shukran for joining me.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Right. So, first of all, what is a will and why is having one so important?
Okay, so from a legal point of view and also from a Sharia point of view, it is very important to have a will drawn up because a will is basically a document in which the testator, that is the person who makes the will, sets out, his important wishes as to what should happen to his assets upon his demise. So the will makes provision, for heirs and legatees to be appointed. And I think that is also very important because a will creates certainty upon the person's death. Because we're living in a society where there's lots of conflict over assets when a person dies. So if there is a will, the will would clearly stipulate, who the heirs are. And I think this would make things quite easy for the family because those would be the wishes of the deceased. And that would then be implemented.
Mm-hmm. I guess now it makes better sense when they say where there's a will, there is a way.
No, absolutely, because without a will, what happens is that it doesn't mean then that the person will lose his assets or the family will be deprived of the assets.
Mm-hmm.
It simply means that in terms of the law, if a person dies without a will, then we say the person has died interstate. What that means is that the law then steps in and the law then prescribes who the heirs are going to be. So there's an act which is called the Interstate Succession Act. And that act then prescribes as to who will be the benefactors in any person's estate. So the way that act is framed is that the primary heirs are going to be, if there is a surviving spouse, it will be the surviving spouse and the children. So the immediate family would be cared for in terms of that act. If there isn't any immediate family, then it goes, to the ascendants, to the parents, and failing that to the brothers and sisters. So, that act is there. But, the point of not making a will is that it deprives you of stating what your wishes are. And I think that's why it is important that people must give consideration to preparing a will. Even from an Islamic point of view, we are told there's an hadith to the effect which says it only 3 days go by without, preparing your will.
Mm-hmm. Now, just quickly on the topic of, it will go, they will look for the surviving spouse and the children. Now, with the situation that we currently have and Muslim marriages partially being recognized, how will it work out there?
Okay, so from an inheritance point of view, from the law of succession in South Africa, Muslim marriages are recognized.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been some case law as well where people are married only by Islamic rights, and for that purpose, the law does recognize Islamic marriages. So if spouses are married only in terms of Islamic Sharia law, that marriage will be recognized for purposes of succession.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there is no will, the wife, even if she's married by Islamic rights, she will be recognized as a spouse for purposes of distribution in terms of the Interstate Succession Act.
Mm-hmm. Okay, alhamdulillah. Right, now, how do we prepare a simple will?
Okay, so in South Africa, basically we have what's called freedom of gestation. It means a person can put into the will whatever provisions he wants, provided that they are not contrary to public policy. So in a will, in the simplest form, a will would simply have a heading to say that this is the will of Mr. or Mrs. X who resides in this particular area. Then the will would normally have a initial provision which, in terms of which the person would revoke any previous wills that they made. Now, this is very important because in terms of the law, because you have freedom of gestation, a person could literally make a will every day if they so wish.
Mm-hmm.
But the will that will apply would be the last dated one. So therefore, if people have made wills previously, they wish to amend the terms of that will, the current will make provision that the will say that the previous wills are revoked. Then what happens is that the person would then have to, in the will, appoint an executor. The executor is the person that is entrusted with winding up the person's estate. Now, there's a fair amount of legal formalities that go into winding up an estate. And in this regard, it is my view that people should appoint family members, and upon the demise, those family members can then either appoint an attorney or an accountant to assist them in winding up the estate, because the legal formalities are not very easy to understand. And then in the will as well, provision is made for the appointment of heirs. So if you appointing heirs, one can either appoint a particular person to receive a particular asset, for example, or you could appoint a group of people to be your heirs, in whatever proportion you want them to be. Mm-hmm. Obviously, from a Islamic Sharia point of view, your heirs are only determined as at the date of death of the deceased. So it's only on that date that the heirs, which are pronounced in the Quran, are then determined, and those people would then be appointed in terms, of the will. So in our law as well, our the Master of the High Court does recognize Islamic wills, because in Islamic will, normally the provision is made that the executors need to establish who the heirs are in terms of Sharia, and that is then supported by a statement that is issued by any alim or from the Jamiat al-Ulama or any other recognized body, and those people are then accepted by the Master as being the heirs, and the distribution of the estate will take place in terms of that particular pronouncement.
Mm-hmm. Now, in a situation whereby a person reverted to Islam and they wish to be buried as a Muslim, can they stipulate that in their will?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very important, especially where there is a possibility of dispute arising between the different families.
Mm-hmm.
So it is very possible that the person in their will could state that it is their wish that they must be buried according to Islamic rites. People can also make, wasiyas to the effect to say, for example, that if they're involved in an accident or when some, that they wish not to have any autopsy carried out upon them. So there are those kind of provisions that can be added into a will. But in terms of revert, the question which is, I think that's very paramount, because we've had many cases where there was obviously a divergence of views, from the opposing families as to how the deceased should be buried.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to take a quick break, Mahmood, and we will continue when we return, especially about what should not be included in the will.
Dam levels for the Port Elizabeth area is at a shocking 11%. 1 July is day zero for the Kucha Dam, resulting in dry taps for hundreds of families in the surrounding areas of Port Elizabeth. Help us strategize. Support our water drive in the Eastern Cape region of South Africa. Donate your lilla towards the erecting of JoJo tanks in impoverished areas and for the vehicles to deliver water in areas of need. Donate to the Al-Fida Foundation. Visit our website at www.alfida.co.za or contact us at 041 484 1288.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious for everyone in the family. Wraps, chicken tikka, burgers, tender grills, mocktails, milkshakes, and so much more. Corporate and events catering available. Visit our social media pages for more info or call 031 209 0119. Kiki's, the Taste with Kick.
Add a sprinkling of sparkles to your magical parties and special occasions with colorful party supplies and decorations to a wide range of baking goods and tools. Packaging from gift bags to meat bags, foil and polystyrene containers, elegant serviettes and intimate candles to disposable wet wipes. A range of glassware, bakeware and stunning wedding accessories just for you. Wholesale packaging available. Sprinkles and Sparkles Party Shop. You'll want it all. Find us at 431 Inanda Road, Parlock, Durban. Call 031 577 0604. Our operating hours are weekdays from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., weekends and public holidays from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Follow us on Instagram at Spring and Spark.
Famine, conflict, and severe economic decline make the humanitarian crisis in Yemen the worst in the world. More than 20 million Yemenis do not know where their next meal is coming from, and over 10 million are suffering extreme levels of hunger. With your support, the Al-Imdad Foundation delivers essential food aid to starving Yemeni communities. It's a question of survival. So let's do what's right. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, has said, "He is not a believer whose stomach is filled while his neighbor is hungry." Help us at Sanzaf to ease the hunger burdens of those in need by providing freshly prepared meals daily. You can be part of this by donating once off or monthly towards the Sanzaf Meals Project. Visit sanzaf.org.za or call us on 011 834 6046 for more information. Sanzaf, changing lives through development and relief.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. It is National Wills Week, and I'm chatting to attorney Mahmood Mia, who's giving us some insight on how to prepare a simple will and what you can include. And now we can find out what we should not include in a will. Shukran for staying with us, Mahmood. Now, okay, we have some ideas of what we can include in a will. So, but what should we exclude?
Yeah, so by and large, I think one should exclude, trying to roll from the grave, so to speak. Sometimes people really burden, their bequests to heirs. So they would say, I'm giving my house to a certain person subject to these particular conditions. So sometimes those conditions may be a bit onerous. So I think one should avoid, imposing too much of conditions in terms of the grant that you're giving to any of the beneficiaries. Also, from a legal point of view, the terms of the will must not be contrary to public policy. So, for example, it would be, one would be able to challenge a clause where the clause says that I'm giving my house to my daughter subject to the condition that she doesn't ever get married. So obviously one doesn't want to do something like that because public policy will not want a person not to get married. So a clause like that could be something that could be challenged, by the beneficiaries. So one would just be, in my view, I think that a will must always be in very simple and straightforward language, and try and give whoever is entitled to the benefits to be given to them in the most unconditional form.
Now, can a single person have a will, or should they also have their own wills?
Yeah, so a will, so long as a person has got assets of any sort, I think it's important that the person then must have a will. So whether the person is married or unmarried, because today we find that there are many young people who are working, but they are not yet actually married. So in a case like that, they obviously are earning and they have some assets, so they must make a will. In the absence of a will, then as we mentioned earlier, the Interstate Succession Act would kick into place. So in those instances, if a person is unmarried and the person passes away, in terms of the Interstate Succession Act, the parents would then be the benefactors, in that particular estate. So the legal position is very akin to the Islamic position.
Right. Now, who can draft a will? Should it be the bank, an attorney, someone specific, or can anyone do it?
Well, as you mentioned, we're now in Wills Week, and I think as attorneys, we're trying to encourage people to have their wills prepared by attorneys who obviously have studied, in this particular regard. But of recent, there's been the growth of many other parties who also offer the service of preparing wills, like banks and insurance companies. Obviously, they also have people who are qualified personnel. But I think essentially you must have a will drawn up by a person that is qualified and is able to give you advice as to how the will should be drafted. I've come across some cases where wills were prepared by people who are not qualified, and that created some disastrous consequences. Because once a will is prepared and certain requests or grants are given in terms of that will, I mean, that has to be put into operation, albeit that isn't the ideal situation for the family. So I think it's very important to have a very qualified person to do your will for you.
Because I'm thinking, if you get a draft will, can you, as a person, just use this a draft and put in your own information, or do you really have to go to a qualified person like yourself?
I think it's important that you see a qualified person. There may be a small cost attached to it, but the danger of just taking one of your pre-printed forms and just having it filled in is that if you don't understand the consequences of what is stated on the document, it may result in consequences which you have never foreseen. So that's why rather take the time to get proper legal advice and do the will in a way that you know that all your wishes will be carried out properly.
All right. Any final thoughts that we should know going forward?
Well, we are in Wills Week now, and there are many attorneys who are offering a free service to the public in terms of preparing a will for them. I think it lasts until the end of next week. So we also on the panel. So if any person wants assistance, go onto the website of the Legal Professionals Council, and all the attorneys who are offering the service are advertised there. And because it is a free service, I think people are encouraged to utilize it.
All right. Shukran so much for your time, Mahmood, and have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Attorney Mahmood Mia taking us through preparing a will and what to include, what to exclude, and who should prepare your will. Like you mentioned, that take the time to prepare it. Don't do it yourself, obviously. Go to a professional, somebody who knows what the information that's inside the will that you are going to be including inside or that you're going to be excluding. So if you're just going to be picking up something from somewhere over the internet, you might not know what is relevant to you and what isn't. So yeah, don't make that mistake. It is very important, and make sure that you have a will in place as long as you have assets. And I remember there was a lady who once told me that as long as you have a child and a job, have a will. Make sure that you have a will in place. As long as you have a job and a child, make sure that you have a will. But we also learned today that a single person can also have a will as long as they are working, they have assets, etc., etc. So guys, it is very important. There might be some companies offering free wills because, trying to encourage people to have wills. Check with your bank as well. I think the banks are also doing free wills. So check with your bank if they're providing that. And if they're not, then you can go to one of the legal professionals council. And I think, it's going to be, I think you'll find someone to help you there. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But just quickly, here are 10 formalities that apply to writing a will. Your will can be handwritten, typewritten, or prepared on a computer, and each of these can be valid, but there are certain requirements for a handwritten or holographic will. Most lawyers will advise against making a holographic will. You can certainly handwrite your own will, but you need to ensure that it's valid. That means it will require certain information such as your signature, date, address, and beneficiaries' addresses. Because requirements vary from state to state, you should have an attorney review your holographic will to make sure it's valid in your area. You must meet your state's requirements for witnesses. Your will must show the date it was signed. It must be dated as of the date you and the witnesses signed the will. Your will must be made voluntarily. No one must force you. Any will that is made by force, subject to threats, under duress will be invalidated. You must have the capacity to make a will. This means you must be of sound mind. It means you must know that you are making a will, that you are preparing for the distribution of property upon your death, that you intend to make a will, and that you know what the will contains. You must be at least 18 years old to make a will. This is referred to as the legal capacity to make a will. Your will must distribute your property. The will has to contain the things a will would normally contain, such as leaving your property to certain beneficiaries. Your will cannot have staples removed. If you stapled the pages of your will together, you cannot remove the staples because it will appear that someone altered or tampered your will. So removing staples may make your will void. Make sure that if it has staples, do not remove the staples, or you will be required to create another will instead. So it's either you're going to staple it or you're not going to staple it. You can always just put a money clip on it. And yeah, those are just a few points that I wanted to share with you. That applies to writing a will. It is 11:28. You are listening to the Mid Morning Talk on Salam Media. Please stay with us. We will be right back.
From the townships of South Africa, the refugee camps in Syria, or orphanages in Yemen, the eyes of the needy speak volumes with just one glare.